Sometimes we call ourselves lazy simply because the word sounds safe. It requires no explanation. It doesn't ask unnecessary questions. It seems to put an end to what should actually be the most difficult conversation, the conversation with ourselves. But what if laziness is not the reason, but a mask? What if it hides fear, loss, or the feeling that you are not living your own life? Today's story is not about weakness. It's about a person who has been silent inside for too long, about how easy it is to get lost between dreams and reality, and about the truth that is most frightening to admit. If you have ever felt that you are capable of more, but for some reason you are standing still, this story may be closer to you than you expect. Sometimes a person looks at themselves in the mirror and sees nothing special there, not because there is emptiness in the reflection, but because they have been used to looking away for too long. They know that somewhere inside there is more than what is visible now, but this knowledge begins to hurt over time. It's easier to call yourself lazy. It's easier to say, everything is clear with me. It's easier to label yourself than to face a question every day for which there is no ready answer. I had known him for a long time, or maybe I just thought I knew him. He was one of those people who are difficult to describe in one word. He wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was surprisingly observant. He wasn't empty. There were too many thoughts inside him. He wasn't heartless. He felt more deeply than he allowed himself to admit. But on the outside, it looked different. He was often late. He didn't finish what he started. He could sit for hours staring at the screen, as if time had nothing to do with him. People simply said he was lazy, and he didn't argue. There was something strangely calm about it. It was as if he had accepted the accusation because it made life easier. If you are lazy, no one expects anything from you. If you are lazy, you don't have to explain why your life is not what you once imagined it would be. Laziness became a convenient excuse, a shield, a mask, a way to avoid answering to yourself. I remember one evening particularly clearly. He was sitting opposite the window, behind which the city was slowly fading away. The room was quiet. Only somewhere in the distance could the sound of cars be heard, like a distant reminder that the world was still moving. He said then, almost in a whisper, as if his words would be heard before he was ready, "I know I can do more, and that's what scares me." At that moment, I realized it was never about laziness, because lazy people don't agonize over unfulfilled dreams. They don't lie awake at night replaying scenes from a life that never happened. They don't feel ashamed of the steps they didn't take. But he did. Every day. He just learned to hide it behind fatigue, sarcasm, and indifference. He often said he was lost, but he said it as a joke, as if it were no big deal. The word lost sounded almost harmless, but there was an abyss in it. To be lost means to walk so long in the wrong direction that you no longer remember where the turn was. To be lost means to realize one day that you are living not someone else's life, but empty expectations of your own. I saw him how he avoided silence. In silence, it became too loud. You could hear the question rising inside. What if you're not lazy? What if you're just afraid to start? That question was scarier than any reproach. Because if it's not laziness, then the responsibility falls back on you. Then you can't hide. He wasn't afraid of failure. It's important to understand that. He was afraid of success. He was afraid of the moment when he could no longer say, "I didn't try." Because if you try, you have to accept whatever the outcome is, and living with uncertain hope seemed safer than facing reality. Sometimes he talked about his childhood, about how he was praised for his intelligence, his abilities, his great future. These words sounded beautiful, but over time they became heavy. They weighed on him. He grew up with the feeling that one day he would have to live up to someone's expectations, but no one explained how to live when you yourself are not sure what you want. And then it was easier to stop. It was easier not to go further than to risk making a mistake. He looked at the people who were moving forward and at the same time envied them and despised himself. "They're just lucky," he said, but his voice sounded different. "Why can't I do that?" He never asked that question out loud because he knew he would have to look for the answer within himself. It took a long time before he dared to admit the main thing. He wasn't lazy, he was lost. Lost between who he was and who he could become. Lost in waiting for a sign, permission, a push from outside. Lost in the fear of making the wrong choice and then living with that knowledge. At one point, his life became very quiet, not dramatic, not tragic, just empty. People drifted away, opportunities passed him by. Days became similar to each other, like pages without text. And it was in this silence that he stopped running away for the first time. He didn't start acting right away. He didn't change overnight, but he stopped lying to himself. He said, "I don't want to hide behind the word lazy." It wasn't a loud decision. It was more like a tired one. It was as if he had been carrying someone else's definition for too long and finally allowed himself to take it off. He started small, not because he was afraid of big things, but because for the first time he allowed himself to go without making any promises. I watched this silently. I saw how difficult it was for him, how sometimes he wanted to give up again and return to his usual numbness. But now he knew it wasn't about laziness, and that knowledge wouldn't let him go. It demanded honesty. He still had doubts, he was still afraid, he still stopped sometimes, but there was a difference between stopping and running away. He no longer called himself lost forever. He began to see the path, not the whole thing, not clearly, but enough to take the next step. Sometimes people think that change looks like a flash, like a sudden before and after. But more often than not, it's like a dawn that you don't notice at first. One day, you just realize that it's gotten lighter, that it's a little easier to breathe, that inside there is no longer emptiness, but silence in which you can hear yourself. He never became perfect, he never became the hero of other people's expectations, but he stopped being a prisoner of his own fear, and that was more powerful than any success, because he finally acknowledged the truth he had been avoiding for so long. He wasn't lazy, he had just been afraid to be alive for too long. And perhaps someone else will recognize themselves in this story, not because this story is about them, but because sometimes the scariest thing is not a lack of strength, but a lack of faith in the right to take the first step. And when a person stops lying to themselves, even if the path remains unclear, they are no longer lost.